Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, What You Want, is about Danny and Tucker's relationship. It is about their friendship, and it's specifically about how one-sided it is to an extent. Mainly because of Danny's ghost powers, and that's the premise of it. That Tucker is jealous of Danny's ghost powers because he never gets to do anything cool because of it. So, in case in point, the episode is very much about Tucker. He's narrating this episode, which is one of the few that have narration. So, because of that, we get to learn a lot about Tucker, and it's essentially just how Tucker sees everything. And sure enough, the episode opens up with the narration where Tucker explains how he and Danny are best friends and have been friends since forever, and how they essentially share everything. What their relationship is essentially based on. They are known for doing pretty much everything together. Case in point, they're currently at a swap meet, and they're currently doing bargain shopping. They buy some skateboard wheels, because they decide to go halfsies on it. They just poke around looking for a bunch of other things. And eventually, they arrive at a shop that's owned by a woman named Baba Shera. And Baba Shera is an old gypsy woman. She has a variety of various lamps for sale, like oil lamps. And Tucker picks one up, and ultimately declares that it is not important, that it's a little too out of his price range, so he decides to put it down, but does thank Baba Shera for her time, at which point he leaves. At which point the two of them leave, and meanwhile, a little girl walks past the same stall, demanding of her mother that she gets cotton candy. And her mother adamantly refuses, claiming that she's had plenty of sugar because they spent quite a bit at the farmer's market that day. But of course the girl is insistent, and in the process, she has a little balloon which snags on one of the lamps and it pulls it over, and the process unleashes a ghost named Desiree. And Desiree's interesting because she essentially acts like a stereotypical genie. She acts like how you would expect a genie. It's like she's based on a genie, essentially, is what she is. And Desiree, of course, hears the girl's pleas for cotton candy and immediately decides to use her ghost powers to make a giant tsunami of cotton candy from the cotton candy machine to kind of give her exactly what she wants, but in the worst way possible. And of course, Danny sees that Desiree is running amok and created a mess of cotton candy. So Danny immediately shifts into his ghost mode, which of course is what we find out from the narration is the one thing that he and Tucker don't share. Tucker is jealous of Danny having ghost powers and wishes he had his own and it's for the somewhat wishes that he could also have ghost powers, but. In any case, Danny then proceeds to confront Desiree, telling her that she's made a mess of the farmer's market and she needs to stop. But Desiree, of course, then proceeds to introduce herself, claiming that she's there to grant whatever his heart desires. But of course, he admits that he doesn't really have anything that he specifically wants. But she tries to get closer to him, asking him that there surely must be something he wants. But he again insists that she stay away from him, and in the process, unlocks a new ghost power. He unlocks a new ability called Ghost Rays, which essentially enables him to fire blasts from his hands. And of course, he uses that too. He accidentally hits Desiree with it, because he hasn't quite figured out he didn't quite know that was a power he had. So he accidentally blasts her with it and sends her flying away from the swap meet. And Danny openly admits that could have gone better, but also is kind of cool. Finds it kind of cool that he found a new ghost power, and also admits that he couldn't do it before, but also is curious to see what else he can do with it. And of course Tucker sees this and points out that Danny was never able to do that before, and wonders if he found a new ghost power. And Danny remarks that he did, but also they high five after a job well done, and this causes Tucker to accidentally go into a stall, not get knocked into a stall, because Danny still hasn't quite learned how to use his ghost rays yet. So he's accidentally blasting people, and that winds up being a problem for a bit of the episode. But he does get better at it. But in case shortly after that, Tucker remarks that the trouble they got into didn't really start until the football game. They go to the game and we find out that Sam is sick with some sort of cold. She is currently she's currently ill. She's currently extremely ill, and and also remarks that she's uncomfortable and doesn't really want to be there. But and also asks Tucker why he forced her to come. And of course, what we find out is that Tucker admits that Danny has the best seats in the house, and they really want to be there to support him. And what we find out is that through Tucker, but also a bit from Danny, is that according to Tucker, the guy who usually covers the mascot for the games was sick as well. So Danny wound up being his understudy and wound up going to the game in his stead. And Danny, of course, is getting trampled by football players and a whole bunch of other things. So he's grumbling to himself about how he wishes he hadn't gotten Seemingly he's realizing Tucker tricked him, because Tucker told him to try out because he could potentially meet cheerleaders, but also for Danny's just getting stepped on. So he goes on to in any case he goes on to just kind of do some mascot shenanigans at the game. But eventually, they realize that they're losing really, really badly. Casper High's team is just not doing great, at all. And it's to the point where Dash is kind of complaining about it, because he's the captain of the football team, so he's a little miffed that they're not doing great. And eventually Sam decides to leave after seeing her team get clobbered. She decides to just go home and rest, because that's what she should be doing. In case, because the team is getting clobbered, Dash eventually pulls the team into a huddle, and admits he wishes he was the kind of monster that could just stop the opposing team in its tracks and keep them from constantly sacking quarterbacks and winning plays. And of course, right on cue, Desiree reappears again and grants Dash's wish, turning him into a giant hulking football-playing monster, which is and of course Danny sees Dash suddenly hulk out in the middle of the game, as does Tucker. And so Danny insists that he's going to need Tucker's help, and Tucker wonders if it means they're going to finally be able to do some ghost fighting things. But and Danny admits that it's something like that. But and what we find out is no. Tucker has to cover the mascot position so that Danny can switch the ghost mode and go and face off against the hulked out Dash. And Dash Danny gets close to Dash and notes that the ghost energy that's turned him into the monster is really strong, but admits that it's hopefully right for the picking. And sure enough, he proceeds to rip the monstrous ghost out of Dash, which returns him to normal, and then shoves it into the Fenton thermos where it can't hurt anybody anymore. And Dash, of course, very confused about what just transpired. He knows he was giving call orders so that everybody could because that's what they do in football. There are calls that will only make sense to your team, and it's usually the quarterback that calls them out. So yeah. But in case he's in the middle of that when Danny de-ghosts him, and he's just very confused. And then kind of mutters a confused hike, and then kind of shouts a confused hike, before getting absolutely clobbered again. And Tucker, of course, points out that the good news is Danny caught the ghosts. Bad news is they took their vengeance out on the guy who replaced the mascot, which, as we find out, is Tucker. So Tucker winds up getting into a lot of really bad luck, at which point the football team decides to take their anger out on Tucker by turning him into a human pinata, which he is not happy about. But in any case, meanwhile, Danny brings the Fenton Firmus back home, and uses what we find out is that the ghost portal in the Fenton Works basement. We find out that the ghost portal in Danny's basement has a port on it for the Fenton Thermos specifically, which enables him to send ghosts back into the ghost zone once they've appeared. And he then uses that to, I guess for a better word, downloads the ghost into the ghost zone to get rid of it. So, that's the only real description I can give. He gets transported to the transported to the ghost zone by essentially uploading it into the portal, it's an interesting idea. But in case as Danny is doing that, he notes a new gadget, which it looks like a dream catcher. He doesn't fully understand what it is, but as he's kind of leaving, he goes through it, and his human half and ghost half are for a brief moment separated. Both Danny Fenton and Danny Phantom are confused for a few moments, but eventually do wind up refusing. And Danny is a little confused as to what transpired. But it's at this point where he hears some noises coming from a tent in the basement. And what we find out is that Jack and Maddie Fenton are also sick with some sort of flu, which they believe to be a ghost flu. They believe it's something to do with ghosts. So they've been trying some home remedies, and one of those is the Fenton Ghost Catcher, which, as Jack explains, works similar to a dream catcher, except it disperses ghosts instead of dreams, which is a cool idea, and probably one of the gadgets I remember fondly, specifically from this episode. I remember that one being a lot of fun. But of course, Danny points out the possibility that it may in fact be, just a normal flu and not a ghost flu, and that not everything, and though he admits that his family does like ghosts a lot, that not everything has to be explained by ghosts. And Jack just mutters under his breath that he remembers when he used to be that naive before going back inside the tent. And of course, Danny, after his parents leave, he pokes around the Fenton Ghost Catcher a little bit more, and does discover how terrifyingly well it works. It's like he just sticks his hand into it, and it immediately separates into his ghost half and human half, and he's realizing it works a little too well, and he files it, and he decides that the best thing to do with it is to just. In any case, shortly after this incident, Danny and Tucker wind up going to the movies, and they conference call Sam, who by this point is bedridden because she realized that she should probably not be out of her house and should be sleeping, and of course, Danny does call her from the movie theater and asks her if she wants anything, but she insists that she's fine and that her family is taking great care of her. And sure enough, what we find out is that her family has this giant wait staff of hospital people waiting for her just at the foot of her bed. And even though she insists that it's just a little cold, but yeah, her family just takes great care of her because they're rich and they can afford it. But they can just afford home care. It's I do like that they do kind of keep that with the continuity of, oh, by the way, Sam's rich. It makes perfect sense. But in case, Danny and Tucker are just happy to go and see the movie, and they remark that they've been looking forward to this movie for a long time, and that they're excited that they're finally able to see it. But it's a horror movie. I forget specifically what the movie is called, but it's a horror movie. But as they're going into the theater, they pass a little cutout for something I think is called Mew Mew Cutie or something like that. And that is supposed to be a parody of Hello Kitty. I should have mentioned that. It is a parody of Hello Kitty. But with the response, but as they're walking past it, they know Paulina is actually at the theater as well, and she goes on to admire the giant statue that she notes everybody thinks is irresistible, and also admits that she wishes that she was that cute and adorable, so that people would find her irresistible. At which point, right on cue, Desiree appears and uses her abilities to turn her into an anime girl. Essentially, this big, cutesy anime girl with a big head is what Paulina winds up turning into. And she then proceeds to and then she proceeds to walk into the movie theater and grabs the attention of everybody that just can see her. Danny and Tucker by this point are getting snacks. At this point, and are on their way into the theater when they see what happened to Paulina and how everybody now finds her absolutely irresistible because she's cute and adorable and this big-eyed anime girl character. It's a very generic anime thing, but it's cute and adorable. I will admit that. But Danny of course realizes that he's going to need to deal with that, so he comes up with a plan to get rid of the ghost inspiriting Paulina. So he does send Tucker ahead to make sure that their seats are safe so that they can just get into the theater no problem. So unfortunately, Tucker once again has to sit out another ghost emergency, and he's starting to get a little bit sick of it. But in case Danny using his ghost powers then proceeds to transform into Danny Phantom, goes into a flying tackle against Paulina and phases her through a wall, and then proceeds to use his new ghost rays to blast the ghost out of Paulina so that he can capture it. And of course it works exactly as he thought it would. He is able to knock the ghost out of Paulina with his ghost rays. And which is, in turn winds up resembling this cute little cat, and he proceeds to suck it up into the Phantom Thermos while Paulina slowly turns back to normal. And very happy that it worked, he then proceeds to go off and go find Tucker. Meanwhile, Tucker is bitter because the movie was sold out that he wanted to see, so he had to find a completely different movie. Of course, he then starts stewing about the fact that Danny always gets all of the luck and all of the abilities to deal with ghost emergencies as they happen. And he openly admits that he's a little bit jealous of how much Danny gets to do to help people, and which is that he had ghost powers too. And of course, Desiree once again appears and tells him that since he wished it, so it shall be. And sure enough, Tucker develops ghost powers of his own, which winds up becoming a conflict for the rest of the episode. But Tucker initially doesn't fully understand what happened until he phases through the seat of the movie theater, and realizing that he now has ghost powers, he's suddenly over the moon and very excited. Meanwhile, Danny is trying to find him in the movie theater. He doesn't know where Tucker wound up and thinks he might have split, but in actuality, Tucker never left the movie theater. He's just taking advantage of his newfound ghost powers to mess with people and steal some snacks from them and a whole bunch of other things, and of course that's reflected in the animation, pointing out that Danny thinks Tucker left. Tucker admits via the VO that he's having the time of his life, which is not great for him. But in case shortly thereafter, outside the movie theater, there is a surfer dude in his car who is currently stuck in traffic, and he's very angry about the fact that he's kind of just stuck in traffic and waiting for things to move and clear up so that he can presumably get to the beach where he plans to go surf. But in case he then proceeds to bemoan the fact that he's stuck in traffic, and then wishes that his car could just fly over everything so he didn't have to sit in traffic like a loser. But yeah, I think, he doesn't say like a loser, but he just feels like he should be out of. But in case shortly after, outside the movie theater, there is a surfer dude who is currently stuck in traffic, and he is bemoaning the fact that he is stuck in traffic, and then proceeds to wish that his car was able to fly over things, so he didn't have to sit in the middle of traffic. And of course, once again, Desiree appears as a voice over the radio, and uses her ghost powers to grant his wish by making the car fly over everything like he asked. And it's at this point where Danny walks out of the movie theater. He sees Desiree and is not happy to see her, asking if she ever even takes a break. But this is this point where he notes the flying car and immediately ducks behind the ticket booth to transform into his ghost form and chase after it. But in the process, Tucker also uses his ghost powers to chase after it, which surprises Danny because he has to do a double take when he realizes that Tucker both A has ghost powers and B volunteered to handle it. And of course, Tucker immediately catches up to the flying car and insists to the dude that it's fine and that he's there to save the day, and also starts calling himself Tucker Phantom. And of course, it's at this point where Danny also proceeds to catch up to the car. Here's Tucker call himself Tucker Phantom, and also points out that, sarcastically adds that, originality aside, he also asks why exactly it is Tucker's doing there, and Tucker, of course, insists that he's saving the day and that he's using and then proceeds to grab the steering wheel to try and land the car. But this, of course, causes Tucker to almost plow the car into a building. So Danny uses his ghost powers to make it intangible so that they go straight through the building. And Tucker, of course, is angry with Danny, pointing out that he always has to save the day. But Danny, of course, points out that he is saving his life and that they're also too young to drive, and points out that plowing the car into the 30th floor of anything is bad. But of course, they start fighting. Of course, they do start fighting over all of this, with Tucker adding that he's sick of never getting to do anything, and that Danny always has to have the last word and always has to be in the spotlight. Which while Danny points out that Tucker, of course, also points out that he notes that Danny must be jealous of his newfound powers. But Danny admits that he's not jealous and doesn't know where Tucker got that idea. But meanwhile, the guy in the driver's seat, the surfer dude, he tells them that they need to focus because they're about to crash into something. And of course, since they're arguing, they kind of have no choice but to crash into a giant chicken silo where the dude is happy because he's got a chicken on his head, but otherwise it's kind of a mess. And it's at this point where both Tucker and Danny escape using their intangibility and are obviously very angry. Obviously, they're still fighting over the fact that what happened, and of course Danny points out that the reason they crashed is because Tucker was screwing around and wasn't actually helping. And Tucker, of course, is still angry at Danny, pointing out that he doesn't really need Danny's help, and that they can, and if he wants to play the hero, then fine. There's more than enough room for an Amity Park for two half ghosts. At which point, Tucker flies away and is notably far faster than Danny. And with Danny noting that maybe Tucker might be getting more powerful, which starts to worry him. But in any case, Tucker admits via VO that he knows he was probably a bit harsh on Danny, but he also starts living up. But in the process, he also at this point where he decides to pull a prank by using his intangibility to just appear in a shop window as a severed head, which just freaked people out. And of course, he then proceeds he calls Sam, who is admittedly surprised that they had a fight, and is surprised that they got into an argument at all. But of course it's at this point. But she does point out that she hopes everything is going okay with Tucker, and Tucker admits that everything's fine and that everything's great, and that he's just chilling, and asks what's happening with Sam, and Sam admits that she's still sick. She's trying to feel better. She's trying to feel better, but but she is still feeling better and hopes that they at least enjoyed the movie. But Tucker admits that they had to bail on it, which makes her a little upset that they didn't get to enjoy the movie, but also points out that hopefully they get to see a movie another time when she's feeling better, and at which point she hangs up. And of course, Tucker admits via VO that he didn't tell Sam that he had ghost powers right away because he didn't want to freak her out. But it's at this point where he starts using his ghost power. This point where Tucker starts kind of using his ghost powers to start messing with people. He starts, and case in point, he then proceeds to mess with Principal Lancer, who swears twice in the same exact segment, but essentially, and again, book titles, but essentially, Vice Principal Lancer goes to drink from the water fountain. It sprays him, and Tucker sprays him in the face with it. He proceeds to use his abilities to, spray Lancer in the face, take Lancer's belt so his pants fall down, and then sprays him in the face again. And Lancer, after experiencing all of this, concludes that he must be losing his mind, because that is not normal. But in case, Tucker then proceeds to de-intangibilize himself and starts laughing behind a row of lockers. And it's this point where Danny finally catches up to him, and admits that he got Sam's cold. He tells him that he's sick, and Tucker picks up on that. But he also points out that obviously Tucker needs to stop because he's taking a little bit too far and is starting to become a little bit selfish. But then Tucker doesn't want to stop and claims that he's going to be that he's fine and that Danny's just still jealous of his ghost powers. But it's this point where Danny points out that he needs to figure out what's going on inside of Tucker, and concluding that there's only one way to do that, he tries to overshadow Tucker, who just blasts him out and into a janitor's closet. At which point he tells Danny to never do that again, or he'll make him regret it. At which point he angrily storms off. And while Danny just looks at him very shocked and appalled. And of course Tucker admits via VO that he wishes he wasn't so harsh on Danny, but he also admits that no one likes a party pooper, and Tucker is very much having a party. At which point he starts to use his ghost powers to again mess with people and starts getting increasingly mean with his pranks. Essentially, he cuts in front of line using his intangibility, which freaks everybody out in the lunchroom. He dumps a bunch of, I don't know what, I think he jumps a bunch of bubble fluid down a tuba in the band room, which causes one of the people in the band to just start coughing up bubbles. And finally, in this one, Danny catches him in the act of. He uses his ghost powers to inspirit Paulina and goes up to Danny, telling him that telling him through Paulina that he is, upset that she's not going to date him ever, and that she's more into Tucker. And of course, Danny immediately knows it's Tucker and tells him to get out of Paulina. But Tucker, through Paulina, insists that Danny make him. So they both then proceed to inspirit Paulina at the same time. At which point they have an argument while inspiriting Paulina. And it's a very hilarious scene, especially during after it. But they start arguing with Danny insisting that Tucker needs to knock it off because he's going to hurt somebody. Tucker insists that he's just a bunch that Danny doesn't get to tell him what to do anymore, and that it's not his responsibility. But it also points out that he was given the ghost powers by the genie that Baba Shira had, and he proceeds to go on to explain. Danny, after arguing with him back and forth a bit, and pointing out that he can't be inspiriting Paulina just because he can, then decides to leave and have a conversation with Baba Shira by de-inspiriting Paulina, and Tucker proceeds to holler back that fine, but when they get back, they're no longer friends. At which point he de-inspirits Paulina, and Paulina had just having a whole conversation happen inside of her. He's very confused, but then realizes she draws the crowd, so just continues with the charade by hollering, "And I was never friends with you." It's so funny, but also really unfortunate for Paulina that she got, and that they essentially fought over a girl. Well, in a girl, specifically, as Tucker puts it, but it's a very funny scene. But of course, Tucker then realizes that he very much regrets, the whole situation, the telling Danny where to find Baba Shira and about where the genie came from, because it's at this point where we actually find out Desiree's backstory. And in keeping with that statement that Butch Hartman made about how ghosts are just magical creatures, we find out that Desiree is also a human with a backstory, revealing that she was a harem girl in the Sultan's harem, and he loved her more than he did his own wife, and would constantly shower her with gifts and grant her every wish and desire, until his wife found out and kicked her out, and she eventually died of a broken heart and old age. So yeah. And this is also kind of foreshadowed a little bit, because, well, so a little bit foreshadowed, but also made especially clear in the latter half of the episode. But Danny realizing what Desiree is, then it also learns that since she died of old age and a broken heart, she's been using her ghost magic to grant the wishes of every man she's ever met in the hopes that somebody will love her again. And they almost come at the terrible personal cost of everybody using it to get the woman of their own dreams and not giving a rat's ass about her. So, which unfortunately caused her to become, I don't know the right word for it, but she essentially, I want to say the word misogynistic, but I don't think that's the right word. I couldn't look up, I don't know. Okay, the word, though I did look up the word, apparently the word is misogynistic, which is it's a different word, but it's essentially the same idea. She's a misandrist. She hates men, specifically. But in any case, Danny, realizing that he now knows how to draw Desiree out, then goes to a wishing well with a quarter, and realizing that the best way to draw out a wish-granting ghost is by using the wishing well to, make a wish and make her get her to lure her into a trap. And he tries that initially, and it doesn't work. So he initially starts to leave, but then another completely different guy comes in and wishes for $1 million and vocalizes his wishes, wishing for $1 million. At which point Desiree shows up to try and grant his wish, but Danny then goes ghost and snatches up the man before she can make his wish come true. And then proceeds to tell her that she's done making wishes come true, and that her wish granting days are over. At which point the guy leaves, pointing out that money is overrated anyway, and he leaves in a panic because he realizes he just saw two ghosts. But in case it's at this point where Danny is very insistent with Desiree about what she essentially did to Tucker. He explains that Tucker has gotten worse and now has ghost powers, and she wants him to undo what happened and change him back. And but Desiree proceeds to explain that she can't not only can she not change him back, but insisting that she doesn't really want to. But also claims that his hatred and jealousy will eventually grow and turn him and make him the most powerful ghost boy in the world. And Danny is a little confused by this, pointing out that he doesn't really think Tucker would be jealous of him specifically, but of course Desiree does point out that that's the whole reason he made the wish. That he was jealous of Danny, so she granted him his wish to become exactly like Danny, And Danny kind of realizing that it's somewhat that he needs to find a way to get that talking to her is kind of pointless, and that she won't undo the wish. Then decides to fight her when she tries to leave, but she gets angry because a man touched her and tells her that no man can touch her unless she wishes it. At which point she starts actively engaging Danny in a fight, and Danny quickly realizes that she eventually does manage to grab him and pin him down, and he realizes he can't become intangible. But realizes he doesn't have to, because he's able to scoop up the Fenton thermos, and then wishes that she would go inside of it and disappear inside of it and be caught. And Desiree, of course, realizes that she has no real choice but to obey his every command, and she winds up getting sucked inside the Fenton thermos. At which point, Danny remarks that he wishes he had thought of that he would have thought of that 5 days ago if he wasn't a C student, and realizes now that all he has to do is find Tucker and figure out a way to get through to him so that his ghost powers wind up being undone. And sure enough, he starts poking around the school, and eventually does find Tucker in the school records room after using his ghost sense to locate him. And what we find out is that Tucker has officially taken his whole ghost ego trip too far, because he is currently changing his grades on the school computer, which of course Tucker points out will get him. Danny points out will get Tucker in serious trouble if he's caught doing it. But he merely responds that it's not so much cheating at his grades or anything like that, as so much as academic enrichment. But Danny, of course, tells him that it's not that he asked Danny if he can do his while he's in there. But Danny, of course, insists that Tucker needs to stop, because he obviously understands what Tucker is going through now, and points out that that Tucker needs to stop, because if they don't hurry, he'll be in terrible danger, because there's a strict time limit on how long Danny has before to undo the wish before it curses Tucker forever. But of course Tucker has no interest of listening, and Danny realizes he's starting to realize he can't get through to him. At which point Tucker proceeds to transform into a ghostly monster, and declares that Danny doesn't get to make the rules anymore, and that now he's the one calling the shots, and his first rule is no more Danny Phantom. At which point he then proceeds to engage Danny in a fight and uses ghost breath to blow him away, which Danny had turns intangible to get to so that he doesn't take the full brunt of the attack. But and if they start fighting, and they start continuing to fight in the school science lab, and which results in a really cool slow-mo shot. But Danny does figure out that he can't really get through. Does quickly figure out that he can't really get through to Tucker, and he does also throw a skeleton at him to try and attack him. But realizing he can't get through to Tucker, he eventually has an idea and realizes that he knows what can get through to Tucker. At which point he proceeds to taunt Tucker and tries to trick Tucker into following him, and calling him Sucker Phantom in the process. And this does work. Tucker gets angry at Danny and does follow him. And Danny proceeds to use his ghost powers to try and kind of attack Tucker, but also not really, to kind of keep baiting him into following him. And what we find out is that's working, but also that Danny is running out of time, and Tucker is progressively turning more into a ghost because he has yet another transformation, by slightly getting somewhat bigger. And Danny and Tucker, and realizing Tucker doesn't have much time, Danny proceeds to then lead him through Amity Park back to the Fenton Works, which by turning intangible, disappearing and reappearing to lower him, and eventually he does successfully work by when Tucker attacks Danny and sends him into the basement with their intangibility. And Danny then fakes a very big thing about how, no, don't send me into the ghost zone, to kind of trick Tucker to go down in the basement. And Tucker admits he wasn't going to do that, but that's a great idea. At which point they arrive in the basement, and Tucker insists if Danny has any last words. So Danny realizing that it's almost noon, realizes that it's now or never, and then sneezes on Tucker to get him to drop his guard, before using his ghost rays to knock him because Danny's sick at this point, and then uses his ghost rays to knock Tucker through the Fenton ghost catcher, which then proceeds to separate Tucker's quote-unquote ghost half from his human half. And Tucker panics, and Tucker does recover shortly after, and then sees the giant ghost version of what he used to be, and wonders if that's supposed to be him. But Danny then proceeds to use the Phantom Thermos to suck the the Tucker Phantom into the thermos, and insists that no, it's not Tucker, not anymore. And at which point the two proceed to make up. Tucker admits that he was sorry he got jealous and put Danny through all of that, while Danny's just happy that everything is back to normal, and they promise to never fight again. At which point they proceed to, and also Danny's parents poke their head out of the tent after this point because they hear talking but don't know who's there, and they also miss the entire fight in the basement, which is funny. But in case with that, Tucker then finishes off his audio log by claiming that though he admits that they had their ups and downs, he does admit that he couldn't have wished for a better friend, and he's happy to have met Danny. At which point the episode then ends with them sharing their cold. Cause they get sick, like Tucker gets sick off of Danny, and they both wind up being ill, while Sam takes care of both of them. And Sam is kind of a little annoyed that they both got sick, and wonders if they had and asks him if they really have to share everything. And of course, Danny and Tucker point out that she has no idea as the episode ends. So overall, this episode is very much a Tucker episode, and it explores his character a little bit more, and about how he and Danny have always been best friends and have never really fought before this episode. And the reason they start fighting is because, well, obviously Danny became a superhero and Tucker got jealous of Danny always being a superhero. But they admit they can't share everything. So yeah, overall the episode is kind of about I guess it's about jealousy and realizing that you don't have to be angry about things you can't really control. The episode is about, because obviously Tucker got angry at Danny for having ghost powers while he doesn't. Then Desiree granted his ghost powers, and he became a monster. And slowly became a monster, especially toward the end. And overall, the episode, the episode is also very much a be careful what you wish for story, because obviously Desiree is a ghost that grants wishes, and her wishes often bite people in the ass. But also, I should mention, Desiree is probably the easiest ghost to defeat, specifically because all you have to say is, "I wish you would be defeated," and she will be defeated. So, and case in point, Danny admits it took an embarrassingly long time for him to figure that out. It's like, she is probably the easiest ghost to defeat, because all you really have to say to her is, "I wish," and then make her defeat herself. She's very easy to beat. But also, I do like Desiree's design as a villain. She's probably one of my favorite villains design-wise. Personality-wise, she's interesting. She's interesting. Obviously, she's had a very tragic. She also has a tragic backstory. Again, it's keeping with the Dan Harmon quote, with the Butch Hartman. Dan Harmon. They have a similar name, so I get them confused. But the Butch Hartman, of course, has again stated that not all ghosts, that ghosts are just magical creatures. This episode again confirms that no, that's not the case, and I'm pretty sure that Butch Hartman did not watch his own show. I'm pretty convinced at this point, or rather, he's trying to change the fact that was the thing he did, because I hate that statement. I really just do hate that statement. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. I hate that statement a lot. But in case that is in fact going to do it for today's review. But yeah, overall it's just be careful what you wish for, and don't be jealous, and just if you're jealous, talk about it. Don't bottle it up, because that's definitely what Tucker did, and that's what he probably shouldn't have done. And it was only after he realized what he had become that he realized that he needed to change and not be and kind of put his jealousy aside. So yeah. But in case that's going to do it for my review of Danny Phantom. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Discord, especially since we are going to be doing a movie review at the end of the month for Halloween. So we're going to be doing a movie watch along. I hope you guys will join the Discord for that. I would appreciate that. But also, Be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen as well. The top video is the most recent. The top video. I gotta change it, but the top video is the top link is probably going to be the previous ones of these I've done. The top and bottom link. One is going to be Megas Month. The other is going to be Courage Month. I gotta work that out, but that's essentially what's going to be happening. That's going to be the featured content when these eventually go up. But in case that is also going to do it. But just also go check out my Patreon down below if you want to help support this. I've worked really hard on it. I hope you guys would support me for that. So yeah, we're gonna be doing that. But in any case, just go do that. I would appreciate it tremendously. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And next time I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.